Hey there, thank you so much for deciding to hang out with me for a few minutes today. In today's video, we're going to take a look at what you might call an alternative to Uptime Kuma, but done a little bit differently. I know a lot of the people here watching my content really like Uptime Kuma. So do I use it. I'm probably not going to switch away from it, even as a result of this video. But if you're looking for an alternate to Uptime Kuma, or you're looking for a new way or a different way or a way for your first time to get uptime notifications and status information and that sort of thing about websites or services that you're hosting, Gatus is kind of a cool way to do it. So if we take a look at Gatus's GitHub repository, we can see that some of this stuff has been updated very, very recently, and some of this stuff has been on the site for years, which is great, which means not only is it an established project, but it's also something that's still being currently maintained and developed. And I super appreciate that. This page is bonkers long. I'll have everything linked in the video description, but this is like, here's the table of contents for this page. And it's so much that there's no way we could possibly cover all of this in just a short tutorial video. So I'm going to have this, like I said, linked in the video description for you to check out. If you jump over to gatus.io/docs, let's actually go here. Let's take a look at their homepage first. I lied about the docs, at least for the time being. So it's the automated status page that you deserve, as they say here. And it says, if your infrastructure went down right now, how long would it take for you to know? And of course, it's got all kinds of selling points and features and that sort of thing, as you would expect on a page like this. And it says you can integrate with your favorite applications like Slack, Discord, Teams, PagerDuty, Twilio, GitHub, Google Chat, Mattermost, Ops, Genie, and GitLab. Those are all different ways that you can get notified if one of your services goes offline. We'll talk about setting up notifications and that sort of thing here in a bit. But this is their homepage, and of course they've got their docs, which I super appreciate that they've got. But before we get into any of that, let's take a look at my demo setup of Gatus, just so we've got a better idea of what we're talking about here. So this is my instance of Gatus. It's a very straightforward page. I actually appreciate the simplicity. There's not a lot of extraneous information here that you don't necessarily need. You know, if we take a look, we can see, you know, we've got our health status up here at the top. We've got their logo mark. We've got core and a check mark over here. Basically, we can toggle this to open and close with grouping. We can actually group different services or whatever into different groups. And then we can just, you know, I only want to look at the NAS group. There you go. There's just the NAS group. So I really appreciate that. Also, you'll notice this green thing here, green check mark, not thing. Anyway, it lets you know, like, hey, there's a big issue here that needs to be resolved. If this was any other color, that would be your indicator. But because it's not, because this is green, there's no real issue here. There was an issue here. I'm actually glad to have seen that pop up, just for the sake of demonstration here. So we can see that the response time was more than 10,000 milliseconds. So something hung up for 10 seconds and it just gave up, but then it immediately came right back up. So that's what statuses will look like. And of course, if you hover over these, it will tell you what's going on in that particular timestamp, which again, I super appreciate. And like I mentioned, we've got core, we've got NAS, we've got social. I just grabbed some different things and threw this together for the sake of demonstration here. But, you know, if we wanted to, we could come back and we can keep scrolling back. We can see these numbers jumping 3, 5, 7, 8 hours, you know, and so we can really go back quite a ways to see what may have happened at any given point. Anyway, you kind of get the idea of what this is going to look like. And when you hover over any of these, again, you're going to get status updates, and I really dig that. But if you want more information about any of these different things that you're monitoring, you can just click the title, and it's going to bring you right into the next page, where again, you're going to see that same timestamp that we saw earlier. Looks like we had a bit of an issue there for a second, but again, popped right back up, fixed itself, so I didn't get notified. So uptime, last 7 days, we've got an uptime guarantee, or we could use this as an uptime guarantee kind of thing, saying over the last 7 days, our uptime has been 99.28%. Not bad. Same over the last 24 hours, and then the last hour, ever so slightly lower because we had a hiccup right there in the last hour. Below that, we get this cool looking chart as far as response times are concerned. When I first saw this, I was disappointed because I was like, well, I'm hovering over this dot. Why isn't it giving me more information? A little pop up, little fly out, whatever. And that's because this is actually an image that it generates on the fly every time there's an update. I'm not entirely sure what their logic is, and this may be just like an industry standard thing. But that's what's going on with these charts, is they are in fact images, not generated, or like JavaScript charts or I don't even know what people are using for charts anymore. That shows how out of date I am with coding these days. But below that, we've got a last 7 days, last 24 hours, and last hour for response times. We can see that right under there with these little badges. Current health is up, and then down here, we can see all of the events that have taken place over the duration that we've been monitoring this for the last 18 hours. So that's kind of what's going on here. We get notifications for when it was unhealthy and when it was healthy. All of that is right here. What else? Oh, we've got a little thing down here for reloading, for changing the time frame here and switching over to light mode. And then a link over to their GitHub repository if you wanted to do that. But again, that will be linked in the video description. Before we get into the docs, I want to just kind of briefly show the Docker Compose that we used for this, as well as the config.yaml file that we used for this, and kind of talk about that, and then kind of expand on that with the docs, because I think it will make more sense that way. So let's take a look at my Docker Compose, and then we'll take a look at the config. Okay, so this is the Gatus Docker Compose, and it's very straightforward, right? It's got a service. The service is Gatus. The image is twin production / Gatus with the latest tag on it. The ports by default uses port 8080 internally and externally. However, I said that backwards. This is external. This is internal. You're likely already using port 8080. It's a very, very common port to use for self-hosted containers. If you're already using port 8080, you can change the first half of this line. Don't change the second half. Only change the part that I've got highlighted there to something else. It's just that simple, but don't ever change the colon or anything after it. Next, we've got some volumes. Now, by default, only the config and the data volumes were in there. However, I added the time zone stuff because I know a lot of people are very much, do everything in UTC time for logging and that sort of thing, which I totally get. But I'm not a data center, and neither is that. And I don't want to have to remember, is this time zone currently 6 or 7 hours behind UTC? Is it daylight savings time or is it not daylight savings time? I don't want to remember any of that. So I put time zones in here. You don't have to put time zones in here if you don't want to. You can remove those lines if you prefer to do things at UTC. This is just what I've decided to do to keep things simple for my brain. But that's the entire Docker Compose for this. There's not really anything else you need to add to that. In fact, I added stuff to it to simplify things for me. So in order for this to work and make sure that you've got everything that you need, you will need a config folder and a data folder. The config folder is going to store your config.yaml file, and the data folder is for the database that I'm using. In this case, it happens to be a SQLite database, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. So this is my config.yaml file for Gatus. Now at the top, I've got alerting, right? This is a section. Alerting is how we will get notified when things go awry, whether it didn't respond in time, whether it was a status change, whatever the case is. These are the methods that we will use to get our alerts, right? So first I've got Discord up here with the webhook URL of whatever that happens to be for your your Discord server. We've got a default alert. By default, it's going to have to fail 3 times for me to get an alert based on this configuration. And then if it auto resolves, do I also want to get a notification for that as well? So you can decide whether or not that is true or false. I've also got Godify set up. So again, server URL, the token for the app that you would set up for Godify, The default alert threshold, I've changed that for Gatify. So I've got a failure threshold of 3, a success threshold of 1, and a send unresolved equals true. Again, you can adjust these however you want. And again, there's a lot of different ways that you can get notified. These are just the two I decided to use for the sake of my little demo setup here. Security, so by default, Gatus doesn't have a username and password to access any of the information here, right? It's just an open dashboard. And you can run it that way, or you can use basic HTTP security where it have like a little pop-up window there. We'll show that. Or you can actually use OIDC. They've got a whole section in their docs about setting up OIDC. However, I haven't learned how to do that yet. There are some great platforms out there based on my understanding, but I haven't done it yet, so I'm not going to try to include it in this video. But the thing about using this basic security setup like this is that in order to generate this password, this is just it's either password or my password, right? But you have to do a bcrypt, and then you have to base64 the bcrypt results. And I'll demonstrate that, but just understand that setting it up this way requires like 2 steps to generate a password. So just something to keep in mind there. Again, all of the resources for this will be linked in the video description. Next, we've got storage. You'll want that. You'll want persistent storage so that if your container reboots or updates or whatever, that you get to keep your data. Otherwise, when you reboot, it won't. I'm using SQLite for this, but you can also use Postgres or you can technically store, you can use memory for storage, but I don't advise it because storage or memory is volatile. So if your system reboots, it's gone. So something to keep in mind, but that's, again, that's all in the docs as well. And then the big section here down below this is endpoints. So endpoints are the things that you are monitoring. So in this case, DB Tech Reviews, the website. I've got it in a core group. That was honestly just, I copied and pasted from their docs and just didn't change the name of the group. So like DB Tech Reviews, Link Stack, and DB Tech Wiki are all part of the core group. And basically what that means, if we come back over to here, oops, I lied. If we come back over to here, this is my core group, this is my NAS group, and this is my social group. And those are all in this. So like endpoints, DB Tech Reviews, like we talked about that. But basically we put in the URL that we want to monitor, our interval, how often do we want to check, what conditions are we looking for? So I'm looking for a status of 200, which means that it's up, and a response time of less than a second. My alerts in this particular case, I'll get notified on Discord for this one. And then the description will just say this. It'll give me more information than that. In fact, it'll give me all kinds of really good information about how or what failed, what the response times were. It'll give me all of that really good information in the actual Discord alert. Or if we take a look at the next one here with Link Stack, again, part of the core group, the URL, all of that's the same. But I was like, you know what? I also want to know if my certificate, my SSL is going to expire within the next 48 hours. So as long as it's over 48 hours, I won't get a notification. So if any of these things aren't true for more than 3 instances or 3 times of this pinging, then I'll get a notification on Gatify. Gatify will also send me notifications on this with a bunch of really good information about, what failed, why it failed, or what the circumstance was that caused it to fail. It'll send all of that information as well. So I really appreciate the in-depth information that you get from these notifications from this system. And then below that, I've got I've got my wiki with more of the same, of the status of 200, the SSL, and the response time. And basically this is all just a bunch of stuff so that I could have, my dashboard all built out and looking full. But that is all there is for the config.yaml file, at least for the very basic one that I've got set up. That said, there's a lot more that you can do with this. If we come over to their docs, they've got a lot of really great information in here about, like status pages and more information about it, endpoints, and things that you can put in there, conditions, as far as what it can look for. So status, connected, response times, IPs, body, so, some JSON stuff in there as well, domain expiration, certificate expiration. There's a lot of different stuff that you can have it check conditions for before it starts reporting back to you as far as what's going on. We've got placeholders. It's a variable that were replaced by Gatus for actual value when the endpoint's health is evaluated. Functions, so different functions in here for that. Again, I'm not great with that aspect of it, but badges, it talks a little bit about that and what those will look like and where they're actually stored. Working with multiple people. This is for a hosted service, I believe. Private status page. Again, this is more self-hosted. Or sorry, this is not self-hosted stuff. Custom host names. And then, of course, sorry, I skipped a whole section for monitoring. We've got HTTP, ICMP, DNS, TCP, UDP, TLS, star TLS. Start TLS, domain expiration, push-based, and advanced use cases. So you can kind of go through each of these things and figure out which monitoring things which things you want to monitor. Alerting, again, getting started. In fact, there's another example of what an alert might look like, and the specific thing that went wrong right there in the body. But then, of course, Discord. I wish they had more information in here about how to do those things. However, if we jump back over, and before I do that, so they've got like Discord, and email, and GitHub, and GitLab, and all of these things that you can put in here. But again, a lot of this has to do with their hosted version. So if you're just looking for basic information, you can go here. However, if you want much more in-depth information about this, for like configuring Discord alerts, we can jump down and see alerting, there's your Discord stuff, and here's what it would look like in your endpoint. So this page is bonkers long. I encourage you to look through it as much as you need to get the information that you need, because there's a lot of different ways that you can configure Gatus. So I think with that said, this video is going to be a million years long if I keep going. Let's take a look at how to get this deployed, and then also how to get a password set up for the HTTP authentication. So one other quick thing I should mention here is that this isn't going to be, it's not going to be very easy to set this up in Portainer, because you're going to have to do part of this in command line. Even if you want to deploy the container itself using Portainer, that would be fine, but you've still got to create the config.yaml file via SSH if you're using a Linux instance anyway. So I'm just going to do everything here in an SSH window over on Proxmox, just because that's my testing server. You don't have to do this in Proxmox, but that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do all of this in the terminal window here. The first thing I want to do while I'm here is create a folder called Gatus. So mkdir Gatus, and then cd into Gatus. Look, I'm doing these commands one line at a time as well. I know that there are other ways that you can combine all of these things and do it much more quickly, but I also want to try to keep this as simple as possible for people who are new to self-hosting and trying to get their feet wet, but also because I've been sick for like 2 weeks, kind of this off and on weird mind melty stuff, and I'm kind of coming out the other side of it, but I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible here. So the next thing we need to do is actually create a docker-compose.yml file, right? So we're going to do nano. I like to use nano. You can use Vim or whatever. So I'm going to do docker-compose.yml. And then what I'm going to do is come over here, and I'm just going to grab this over to here. I'm just going to paste this in. So again, we've got our service of Gatus, our image, our ports. Again, if you needed to, change this, if you're already using port 8080, you could do 80 or 8787, just for the giggles of it. Now, below that, we've got a couple of volumes that we need to make sure that we have in place. We need to create a config volume, and we need to create a data volume. The config volume folder, the config folder volume, whatever, is going to be where we're going to put our config.yaml file. The data folder is going to be where our database is stored. Again, I'm using a SQLite database for this to keep things simple, but you could use Postgres if you wanted to. And then below that, we've got our time zone stuff that we've already talked about. So we're not going to do anything with any of this other than save and exit. And I'm going to make 2 directories. I'm going to do first, I'm going to clear my screen. I'm going to do mkdir data, and then mkdir config, right? So if I do an ls, now I've got config data and docker compose. So the only other thing I need to do here is cd into the config folder, like so, and then I need to create a config.yaml file. So I'll do nano config.yaml, and here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this. Actually, I'm not going to do that yet. Two things. One, I'm not going to have alerting set up for this simple deployment. It just doesn't make sense for this. So I want to just delete this whole section here. Oops. And then I also, I want to change this password so you can kind of see the steps that are involved in that. So what I'm going to do, I've got notes here. I'll have links to everything again down below. The first thing we need to do is, we need to go to like bcrypt online. You don't have to use this particular thing. It's just what I'm going to use, right? I'm just going to type in my password. And of course you would put in whatever you want your password to be. Again, for the sake of simplicity here, I'm just going to use my password. In the documentation, I believe it said to use a cost of 9. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to generate the hash. So there is our hashed password using bcrypt. Now, the next thing we need to do is actually then do a base encode or a base 64 encode of this. So we're going to go there. And then I'm going to use base 64 to encode the bcrypt hash, right? So next we're going to click encode. And right there is that. So I'm just going to copy this. Then I'm going to go back over to here. And I'm going to delete and paste. Now our username will be dbtech and our password will be my password. Below that, we've got our storage, again, for that SQLite in the data folder that we created just a moment ago. And then a list of endpoints here. I'm going to modify some stuff, but it'll be faster to do it in command line. So what I'm going to do is just paste in this config.yaml file. And so if I scroll all the way back to the top, we'll see everything that's in there, right? What I do want to do, though, is remove all of this alert stuff by using Control-K. Just go down to the lines you want to delete, Control-K. Okay, so once we've got this set up the way we want it to, monitoring the things we want to monitor with the conditions and with the notifications and with the database and with all the different things that we want, we can save and exit. And then we can go back a directory. Oops. So now we're back here. We were just in the config folder. Now we're back in the root directory here. So we just do docker-compose.yml. I already pulled this once because this is my second time recording this. So that's why that went so quickly. But now that this is up and running, I want to grab the IP address. We're on 243. And you can see that's what it was on before. Now we're on 8787. And again, now it wants me to log in. So dbtech and then my password. So there you go. Just that quickly and easily we are up and running. We're monitoring all of the stuff that we wanted to monitor. And of course, if we go into these, we can see that it's already generating our graphs and all of our response times and our current health. It's generating all of that just that quickly. So super happy with that. And that is Gatus. Hopefully, if you're looking for a new way to get status pages and uptime alerts and status alerts and things like that, hopefully Gatus will be something that you'll take a look at for your own setup. So I think with all of that said, I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me today. If you want to support Gatus, go give their repository a star. That would be cool. If you want to support the channel, like, subscribe, become a channel member or a patron, all of that is a great way to support. And by becoming a patron or a channel member, you get earlier access to my content, but never any ads. And you get your name on the screen back there as a bit of recognition. So with that said, again, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.